All right, there we go. What's up, everybody? My name is Francesco. This is what month are we in? September. This is the September Achilles Connect Zoom. Joining me today is Casey from the office. What's up, Casey?
Hey, Greg.
Casey's waving. Casey just comms at Achilles, and today my normal sidekick Kat is abandoned us, and so we're catless. And so today Casey's on board. Kat's in the chat, I think, right? Is Kat still in?
She is. She's
All right, all right, Kat. All right. We forgive Kat because she is joining remotely. I forget. There was 1 month I don't know if you guys remember. It's actually the only month that we did this Achilles Connect Zoom remotely, meaning Kat and I were not in the same room together. And so I usually have someone with me because it's hard for me to do this, plus listen to my voiceover on the computer, right? For those who don't know, blind people, there's a screen reader software on the computer, and that's how we interact with the computer. But it's basically like talking and listening at the same time, so a little tricky to do. And so I did my announcements, I did my thing, and I'm like, all right, Kat, what are the questions? And it was just silence. And it's because I forgot that I had to unmute her. So it was like 30 seconds of absolute panic. And then I realized, oh, wait, she is still here. She didn't leave. She's just muted. So yeah, we don't have to worry about that today because Casey's right next to me on my right in the office. And we're going to get started. So as usual, we're going to talk about upcoming events, what the races are, things to keep on the radar. And then we're going to get into New York City Marathon, a little bit of chat about what you should do. Maybe you haven't started your long runs at all. Maybe the last time you ran was last year's New York City Marathon and you still haven't started your training. Maybe you've been 100% dialed. Regardless, we're going to talk about just some tips on how to get ready for your fall marathon if right now is when you're starting. So some running stuff, some nutrition stuff, some training your gut on how to handle race day nutrition, how to prevent injuries. And yeah, that's how we're going to do it. And then we're going to have some Q&A, the best question. Potentially the best question chosen by Casey. We'll see if I want to put the pressure on Casey. Because that way, if you don't like who I choose, you can blame Casey. But Casey's going to choose who the best question is or who asks the most, conversation sparking question. And yeah, are we being joined by a guest?
Special guest.
What's up? Okay, cool. So a couple things to keep on the calendar for upcoming is this Saturday is our first of 2 pop-up adaptive cycling events at Floyd Bennett Field. Now, a few reasons of why this is a really cool event. So for those who don't know, part of the Department of Education in New York City, there's a program called EVS, and that's Educational Vision Services. And that's basically anyone within public school who has a visual impairment is technically part of EVS, and you're assigned a vision teacher and a mobility instructor to come into your classroom and kind of teach you how to, walk with a cane and things like that. And at the end of each year in high school, they had a all, blind, low vision kids camping trip at Floyd Bennett Field. And so this actually takes me back to my freshman year of high school, where a bunch of blind kids and our vision teachers all went camping at this abandoned World War II airfield. And so we are doing the first one being this Saturday, and then the second one being Saturday, October 5th, 2 pop-up adaptive cycling events from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can sign up. It's all on Rosterify on the events calendar. And you show up, you could do tandem biking, hand cycling, recumbent biking, racing wheelchair, basically anything on wheels. There will be pizza provided, and it's going to be a really fun way to explore biking down an airstrip. Very, very difficult to find something to hit because it's very wide and open. And so that's the first thing. Second thing to keep on your radar is the New Jersey Hope and Possibility. That's September 29th, Sunday. We're going to provide transportation from Brooklyn, from Queens, and from Manhattan to get over there, whether you're an athlete or a guide. Registration link and address and all that info is in your race calendar in Rosterify. That's Sunday, September 29th. Guides are needed. Athletes 100% sign up. We are doing equipment transport as well, by the way, for all any athlete on wheels. The third event is Race for Rehab. This is our annual 5K that is hosted by New York Medical College. All the proceeds go to Achilles. It's Sunday, October 6th. And so that's the day after our second Floyd Bennett Field adaptive cycling pop-up. And similar thing, we'll be providing transportation for athletes and guides. They give us breakfast. It's kind of, because, it's kind of a whole morning thing. If you have brunch plans, don't come. But otherwise, we can be your brunch plans. And so those are the races that are coming up. Keep it in mind, it's all on your Rosterify dashboard. If you log into your Rosterify and you hit events, and under the events calendar within events, all of these are listed, and that's how you sign up for all these opportunities. Even if you're registered for the race, if you still need transportation, please sign up on Rosterify, because that's how we make sure we have enough seats. Otherwise, we don't have enough seats and we're going to have to start stacking people in trunks, and we don't want to do that. So please sign up. If you have any trouble with that, email nyc@achillesinternational.org. I feel like I need a button or like a jingle for that, because of the number of times I say that on these Zoom Connects. But email nyc@achillesinternational.org if you have any questions about any of that. And if you have any Rosterify troubles, you need your password reset or anything like that, email rosterify@achillesinternational.org and they will sort you out. So that's the upcoming events. Casey, any questions, or should we keep going?
Good.
All right, perfect, right on. So
Let's see what we got.
tell me.
Oh, this is a Rosterify question. I can reply to this.
Okay, cool. All right. Cool. So the info session for today, and this was sparked a little bit by some athletes at the Tuesday evening Manhattan workout, who, we had a little conversation about, well, we have these training plans, but we haven't really started the training. And is it too late to train for the marathon? And like, what do you do if you're starting now? It's 4 weeks away or 8 weeks away. What do we do? And so we're going to talk about whether you have been solid on your training plan, or if you haven't started yet, what are the things to keep in mind? And so the first thing, we're going to outline what the next 8 weeks should look like if you have not started yet. And then we'll go into, again, the pacing, some runs to include, how to train your gut to handle the race day fueling aspect, and some injury prevention tips. And then we're going to get into Q&A. So we have about 8 weeks left before the New York City Marathon. The last 2 of those weeks should be taper, which means we have 6 weeks of actual meaningful training that we could put in, right? It's hard to get adaptation, endurance adaptation 7 to 10 days out from anything. And so those last 2 weeks are for tapering, it's for recovering, it's the ponder the thing that's about to happen to you, 26.2 miles to New York City. And so what do we do in the next 6 weeks before that taper starts, right? And so if you're calculating your mileage through time duration or miles, both are going to look kind of similar. Again, I hesitate to give blanket recommendations, but in general, we want to slowly but surely and consistently build to a long run, right? Now, studies will show that any run longer than 3 hours is counterproductive, right? The risk of injury goes way up versus the actual adaptation that is sparked by that training, that workout. After 3 hours, it becomes counterproductive. So if we are, coming from a place of not ideal volume, we haven't really been training, we definitely don't want to go over that 3 hour mark. And so if we want to divide the next 6 weeks by building from, either you can do a 10 mile and then add 2 each week. So 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 miles, right? Those are your next 6 long runs. Did I do that math right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So 10, 12, 14, right? And then 16, 18, 20. So normally you would do a bit of a taper in between, but because we don't really have the time for that, 6 weeks, build 2 miles each week. And those don't have to be fast or hard, right? If anything, your long run should be easy conversational pace. Even if you run a mile, you walk for 2 minutes, you run another mile, you walk for 2 minutes. Even if you do sort of a run walk interval like that, getting to that time duration for 3 hours is key, because then you're prepping your body as much as possible with the time that we have left in order to do that. If you rather do a time-based training, which we also include in our training plans at Achilles, you can do that. You can start at 90 minutes, so an hour and a half long run, right? Say this weekend. And then each week you add 20 minutes, so an hour and a half, hour 50, 2 hours, 10 minutes, 2.5 hours. And for the last two, you add 15. So 2 hours and 45 minutes, and then 3 hours. And so that 3-hour mark, right, is what we're building towards. That's your 6th week. The week after that, taper down, maybe do an hour 15, and then you have race day. So that's how I would build. We actually, there are a lot of first-time marathon runners that we have doing the New York City Marathon this year, which is really exciting. But the stress level is a little high within the athletes that are running, understandably, right? 26.2 miles, it's a long distance. And so we want to make it as attainable and as calm as possible, because, you know, it is something that we do a lot, right? We run. We're not running 26 miles, but we run. And so the difference between half marathon, 26.2 miles, I think is just, it's kind of perspective. So that's what I would do for the next 8 weeks. And remember, if you have questions, type them out. Casey will kind of keep track of that, and we'll answer them in a few minutes. The next thing I wanted to include is, regardless of if this is the first time you're starting your training, or if you've been training for months and being really consistent, some of the things I would include in your training. The main one is hills. I think because there are not like actual hills so much in the New York City Marathon, people skip out on hill training, but I would not forget the bridges, right? The bridges are quite challenging. New York City Marathon has about double the elevation gain that the Boston Marathon has. And everyone makes a really big deal about Heartbreak Hill in Boston and the last half of Boston being really hilly. Let's not forget that New York City Marathon is double what Boston is. And so when you're doing your training, whether it's your long run or your speed work, it's important to do it not on just flat ideal ground, right? We want to start training the body to be able to run uphill as well as downhill. A lot of people neglect training running downhill, but the downhill will honestly burn your legs more than the uphill. The uphill feels harder, obviously, because you're working against gravity, right? You're trying to pull yourself up this hill. But the downhill will actually burn your quads out more than the uphill will, because you're trying to decelerate your speed and fight against that gravity as you're running down the hill. So it's important, if you do speed work and you're used to sprinting up the hill, but then you stop and you walk down the hill, it's important to include some downhill running in your speed work and in your long runs as well. One consideration, a lot of our athletes here, other running groups and other coaches talk about practicing the bridge runs, right? People have like bridge runs. They run the Queensboro Bridge, or they run the last 10 miles of the marathon course, or the last half marathon of the marathon course, and they actually try to run the actual course. There are actual like speed work meetups where all you do is you show up and you run the bridges to kind of start training for them. That can be a good method. The one thing I will caveat that with is, a lot of times the run paths on the bridges are not necessarily wide enough for either adaptive equipment to get on, or for a blind runner and their guide to be side by side. And so, especially even just like running through the streets, right? Doing the street crossings, running through the little, like, if you want to get from Central Park to the Queensboro Bridge, you're running down 59th Street. It's not always the most wide. And so you have to also consider the quality of the training that you're getting, understanding that the streets are not shut down. And so you're going to be running around people and around, outdoor seating and things like that. And so if someone, what I usually advise athletes is, yes, it can be psychologically beneficial to actually practice the bridges and parts of the course. But if you're asking from a purely training adaptation standpoint, better to just get the quality training in the park where you have a consistent training place. You're not worrying about dodging around outdoor seating. You're not worrying about you and your guy trying to run where there's enough space for one person. If you want to do that on an easy day, totally cool, because then you can at least get a sense of the course, but maybe not on your key workout day, right? And if you have questions about that, send them in. one quick thing I'll say about training your gut, if you have not started training with gels or with calories, now is the time, because the putting all that very concentrated carbohydrate mix in your gut on race day, if you haven't been training with it, it's very difficult on the gut, and it takes weeks for your body to get used to digesting that much, right? We talked in previous sessions about the ideal target starting off at 60 grams of carbs an hour. That's about 2 gels an hour. And slowly working your way up from that, right? Some people are able to train themselves to consume or to be able to absorb up to 90 or 100 grams of carbs an hour. That's like 4 gels an hour. That's a lot of gels. But if your body is able to absorb that, it's really great, because you're getting yourself that much more fuel and that much more energy. But to go straight to that on race day, not ideal. So if you have not been training with gels, now's the time. If you read the packet on the gel, it'll tell you how many grams of carbs is in it and how many calories. And remember, 4 calories equals 1 gram of carb. So regardless, whether you want to calculate using calories or using carbs, just be consistent, choose one and try to shoot for starting off at 60, 65 grams of carbs an hour. That's a good starting point. And then you slowly work your way up from that. And when you start feeling like your gut feels a little heavy, you feel a little bloated, whatever, that's how you know, all right, this is my ceiling. You're going to back off a little bit, and that's where you want to sit for this year's marathon. I think that's about it. What do we got, Casey, in terms of questions? Well, someone emailed in a question, by the way.
Yes.
The questions are for live, but someone emailed a question, my boy Ashraf, and so Casey's going to read that question real quick, because it was a pretty good question.
It was a great question.
Yeah.
All right. What are the most effective strategies for adjusting my marathon training plan if I need to address a minor injury or illness in the final weeks leading up to the race?
All right. Perfect question. I would say the main thing to keep in mind is this is not high school finals, right? Don't cram. Cramming is not good for marathon training. I have to tell myself this too, because my tendency is also to cram. You don't want to, the most common cause of injury in runners is improper progression. That is like by far, inarguably, the most common reason why runners will get injured is that they progress inappropriately, whether that's they progress too quickly, because again, right, you get injured or a setback or work gets crazy or something happens and you're not able to get your training in, and now you're like, oh my God, I have 8 weeks left. I'm going to do 2 long runs every week and just, grow my volume from 10 miles a week to 40 miles a week and all these things. Not ideal, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a training plan, even if you miss certain key workouts, I would stick with the plan, because it's better to stick with that existing plan and at least keep your progression, in a organized linear fashion, than to try to cram in. Now, if you don't have a training plan, I would follow kind of what we talked about before, right? Where we're doing long runs, we're progressing probably faster than you normally would progress, but not, you're not just jumping in at an 18-mile long run or a 20-mile long run. We have 8 weeks left again. So you have 6 weeks of solid training. Start at 10 miles, increase that mileage. Don't go over 3 hours. Especially if, like you said, injury, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if the reason of your, that you miss some training is an injury. You don't want to jump in too quickly, because the worst case, right, is you re-injure yourself, and that's not fun for everyone. So, yeah, I'd say the one thing that we have an athlete in the chapter who's coming back from an injury, and we kind of rewrote the plan to include run-walk intervals. And that can be something cool, because it's you run a mile, you walk for a minute, let's say, and that minute is a really great reset to kind of lower that perceived exertion level, as well as just get your heart rate back down, and just kind of calm you down before the next mile. So hope that helps. What else we got, Casey? Thank you.
Okay, next question. If you're a guide that's guiding an athlete that has a pace that is different than your own, for example, the athlete's used to walking 16 minutes, whereas you're used to running 10-minute miles, how should you, as the guide, adjust your training?
That's a great question. So there's 2 ways I would take this. One, you definitely have to train running a pace that you're not used to running, right? And so generally speaking, right, we pair athletes with guides who are faster than they are. One example is one of the people that's guiding me for the marathon. His name's Tom. His marathon time is about 3 hours. If we run a 3:30, then that means that that the marathon pace that we run will be 30 minutes, so about a minute and 10 seconds per mile slower than his marathon pace. It's a different muscle, right? Your vertical oscillation is different when you're running a slower pace. Your ground contact time is different. All those different elements, the nerdy Garmin metrics that we ignore after each run, all of those are different, right? When you're running a different pace. And so if you're suggesting running 3-4 hours at a pace that you're not used to training, it's difficult, right? That's why, I mean, we'll have guides who train for a 4-hour marathon and they'll guide a 6, 7, 8-hour marathon. And it's that it can impact their bodies more than if they were to run their usual pace. And so I think it's definitely worth training at the pace that you think you're going to run at, even if that's a slower pace than you're capable of, because it trains different muscles, it trains your body to be able to exert for that long, right? That's one. The second piece of it is if it's a pace that will result in a significantly longer finish time than your normal finish time, it's a different fueling proposition, right? Now you have to fuel for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours longer than you normally would. And so can your gut handle that much fuel 3 hours plus whatever you're used to? Maybe instead of gels, you do a little more solids like goo blocks, right? What goo blocks is like it's like cube gummy bears kind of thing. So maybe like that'll sit in your stomach better, or waffles, right? Not like Belgian waffles, but stroop waffles or something, honey stinger waffles, right? So different elements like that, I think, are worth discussing when you're doing anything that's not something you're used to. So yeah. What's got, Casey?
So, Nice wants to know, what do you advise for cross training in preparation for the marathon?
Awesome question. So if you're not running 3 times a week, I would 100% recommend 3 times a week, right? Now, to go from 3 to 4 times a week, the benefit of running, let me back up. If you're running only 2 times a week, the benefit that you see in adding that third run is immense, more than other types of training. If you're already running 3 times a week and you want to increase to 4 times a week, the benefit that you see is a lot less than adding that third run. And so if you're considering adding a different type of workout as cross training, I would only do that if you're running 3 times a week at least. I'd say, what's the benefits, or what kind of cross training?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The most, I would say strength training, 100%, because strength training, right? Running is obviously an aerobic exercise. It causes the adaptation that is caused by running makes your body really efficient at handling calories, right? Because it's endurance. Anything endurance promotes our bodies to be more efficient at handling calories. This generally will result in slower metabolism, which is great when we're trying to run longer and longer distances, but a slower metabolism is not necessarily the best if we have other goals in mind. And so adding something like resistance training will make sure that we're balancing our metabolism, even speeding it up to, and there's a whole list of myriad of benefits to doing that. It also helps prevent injury because, we're more stable, we're working on our muscular structure, our skeletal structure, all that stuff is becoming more robust by introducing resistance training. And so even something simple like, starting strength, which is a Mark Ripto program, or a Woodling program, or some sort of like basic, hey, I'm going to do a full body movement, right? Squats, deadlifts, overhead movements, things like that, even just once a week, will make us a lot more resilient of a runner, a lot less prone to injury. And we can carry more food back from the groceries because we got more strength, and we can eat more, and it'll be all great. So yeah, what we got?
All right, our next question is from Brittany. Hello, I am new to running with my vision loss. Is there any tips or suggestions on how I can track my pace that I can use as a visually impaired runner?
That's an awesome question. The only watch that has built-in accessibility is the Apple Watch. I wear a Garmin watch, but I can't tell time on it, which is a whole other conversation. the only watch that actually has a built-in screen reader where you can poke at it and it'll tell you different things is an Apple Watch. That being said, you don't need a watch to do that. You can have a free app like Strava or something like that on your phone and set up audio prompts for it to tell you, pace, heart rate, things like that. If you're training by heart rate, you can have, like heart rate zones and pace zones. Even if you're not blind, just figuring out like the different metrics you want to train to and sticking to that, right? Yeah, it's getting, as a blind runner and as any runner, right? Getting the instant feedback of what you're doing while you're doing it is really, really key. Whether it's, hey, I have a heart rate zone run, and so I need to know what heart rate I'm training at exactly right now, not after the fact. Or if it's a pace zone run and I have to stay within these paces because that's what my Achilles training plan has prescribed. Right. It's not very helpful if I'm told what the pace was after I'm done running, right? You have to know it in the moment. And so obviously if you should 100% come to an Achilles workout if you haven't been to one yet. Guides can 100% assist with, reading heart rate and pace and all that stuff at an Achilles workout. But beyond Achilles workouts, there are free apps. And the Apple Watch is, again, the only wearable that'll actually read. You can actually like interact with it. Garmin has audio cues. They're sort of customizable. It's a little like, you're trying to fit a round pole in a round peg or whatever that saying is. I don't know, my dad's rolling right now. He was like that. You totally butchered that, but it's a little like, that, but it works. The only reason why I know blind, especially triathletes who have Garmin's, is because Garmin's will pair with power meters and things like that for cycling. That's the only reason why, sometimes Garmin over Apple Watch. So yeah. What else we got, Case?
In the same vein as stair-stepping runs and 2 or 15-minute increases in the weeks leading up, any recommendations for tapering down in the 2 weeks prior to race day?
Yes. Don't overthink taper. Tapering, yes, is the whole goal of tapering is to lower our training load stress, right? And so if we're talking, right, we've talked about the different metrics to manipulate in a training plan or running, right? We talked about duration. We talked about intensity. Those are like kind of the two big things, right? You either do something more or less intense, and you either do it for longer or shorter. Those are the two levers that we can pull. Frequency is that third piece, that third lever that is less talked about than duration and intensity, but in a taper becomes more important. And to put that in simple language, it's way more important to keep the frequency up in a taper than it is to do a longer workout or a more intense workout. Like literally the last 2 weeks before a marathon could be you just doing 3 15-minute runs a week. And that will be a better taper than you trying to squeeze in last hard interval run or a last really long run because you felt like you missed out on long runs. Just, whatever the number of runs a week that you've been doing in the weeks leading up to the marathon, I would keep that frequency, even add one, but pull back a lot on the intensity and pull back a lot on the duration. We're talking 30-minute, 40-minute runs max, because anything more than that is, right, the purpose of an hour-long run is to promote adaptation. And within the 10 to 14 days before a marathon, you're not getting adaptation that'll benefit you for that race day. And so all we're doing is stressing our bodies unnecessarily. And so 30 to 40-minute runs a couple times a week, that's all I need to do. One piece I'll add on that, because my dude Dolphin always asks me this at the workouts, and so it's worth mentioning to everyone. Most people don't need the carb load. If you're eating a normal amount of carbs, as in you're not doing a low carb diet, which as a runner, I would strongly recommend not doing a no carb diet. But if you're eating a normal amount of carbs in your food, in your diet, in your meals, you don't have to worry about loading up on carbs in the weeks before marathon. Maybe have a big pasta dinner 2 nights before, the night before. That's about it. Cool, Casey.
Beautiful. It looks like our last 2 questions are actually related a little bit.
All right.
Both of them asking about weight. Our first one comes from Stephanie. Can
Cool.
you gain weight while training for a marathon? I've noticed I'm gaining weight because of the extra carbs in my diet.
Yes.
Do I need to do something differently? The other question is it okay to lose a little bit of weight during the remaining time before the marathon?
Yes, so it's okay. First, we have to make sure that we're measuring weight appropriately, right? It's very, I can wake up, say I can wake up this morning and I can weigh whatever, however many pounds. I could wake up tomorrow morning and literally weigh 10 pounds heavier or 10 pounds lighter just by, am I eating more carbs or sodium or whatever this day, or am I doing something really intense and therefore promoting inflammation and whatever. There's ways to manipulate your weight so much that if you're not measuring the weight, right, if the input is not being accurate, then it's hard to have this conversation, right? So getting consistently weighing yourself first thing in the morning, right? Whatever the structure is key, because then you know what you're playing with, right? Say, all right, every morning I'm going to wake up, use the bathroom before I drink or eat anything, weigh myself. If you do that for a couple days in a row, you'll slowly start to see, all right, like I'm hovering plus or minus half a pound or a pound around X level, right? Once you establish that baseline, now we can start talking, all right, like, and the reason why I'm saying this is some people, they'll like weigh themselves one day in the afternoon, another day in the evening after they eat dinner, and one day in the morning before they eat anything. And these numbers are so skewed that it's hard to make, decisions or judgment calls just based on those numbers. The other thing, it's totally normal to either lose or gain weight. And this is a kind of it sounds like a cop-out answer. Like, yes, both are true. But it kind of depends on what you're doing. Running by nature is an inflammatory activity, right? It causes inflammation. Anytime you're adding stress to the body, it promotes inflammation. Anything inflammatory helps you, or not helps you, it makes you gain weight because you're holding extra water and stuff because your body's more inflamed. So yes, you will weigh more on the scale. If you're doing a bunch of what's called zone 3 cardio, meaning it's not easy enough for you to, for it to be a recovery run, but it's not hard enough that it's, an intense run that you'll adapt from. If it's just this like sort of vaguely feels hard, but is not really hard, but not really easy. If you're doing a lot of runs in that middle kind of zone, you're causing a lot of inflammation and not getting a lot of benefit from it. So I would stay away from that, right? Most runners either do the runs too easy or they don't do the easy runs easy enough, and they don't do the hard runs hard enough. And so you kind of want to make sure those runs are separate. Yes, normal to also be losing weight because now you're doing a lot of exercise and you're, moving a lot more. So your caloric burn is higher, which means, unless you're replenishing all those carbs, which can be really hard, or replenishing all those calories, you will lose weight. So weight it can be a very nuanced and very complicated discussion. If you're interested in that, we can dedicate a whole session just on weight. So email in, please, if you would like that. But that's the short answer. If you want the long answer and you want a whole session on weight, we can definitely do that the next session. So yeah.
Great.
All right, Casey.
One last question. This one actually
you stuck
came
it in.
to
Okay.
us
Okay.
from unrelated to the marathon.
Renee, what's up? Okay.
Jersey go last month.
Oh my goodness, Renee, we missed you. The training camp was awesome. So, all right, this is a good way to end. So for those who don't know, Achilles has a triathlon team. It's called Tri Achilles. And we had our first ever training camp hosted at NJCU, New Jersey State University. It was in Jersey City. It brought me back to college because we rented out college dorms. We ate in the cafeteria. The evenings, as you can imagine, people were like walking up and down the hallways, like knocking on each other's rooms. Like it took me back to college. It was awesome. People swam, biked, ran, did strength for the whole weekend. It was really cool, really fun. I really, really want to do another one. Well, we're definitely doing another one next year. I'm going to try to do a camp similar during the winter, maybe like a swimming specific camp or something like that. We still have to work on it. If you have any ideas or requests, obviously always email in nyc@achillesinternational.org. But yeah, thank you for asking. It was really great. We had 65 members, athletes and guides come, I think. Biggest camp we've ever done and really fun. So great question, Renee. Yeah. All right, Casey.
All right.
Who gets the shoes? Who gets the Hokas? And if y'all didn't win, you can blame Casey.
Oh my God. Sure.
Yeah.
My favorite question probably came from Brittany.
Brittany!
And was asking about tips on how to
Well
train
done!
especially hair runner. Yay, Brittany.
Brittany, you just won some hokas. We're gonna get in touch with you. Or actually, I don't know who you are. So you gotta email NYC at Achilles. Yeah, so email NYC at AchillesInternational.org. So we can get your info and we'll send that over to you. Well done. Congratulations. Congratulations, everyone, for being here, right? We're all doing this marathon, or we're all doing the marathon of life, whether it's the 2024 New York City Marathon or it's just to the next day. And so we're all here together. Thank you very much to Casey for co-hosting, co-piloting this train wreck of a Zoom session. But it wasn't a train wreck because you were here, Casey. So thank you. Catherine, you just don't want me to replace you, Catherine. She really does. She's like, please, Casey, just start doing this every week. All right, y'all. That's all I got. Email NYC at AchillesInternational.org if you have anything to say. Email Casey if you have any compliments for her co-hosting abilities.
I love to chat anytime.
Casey loves to chat. If you have any photos from workouts, send them to her. And I think that's about it. I will see all of you in the park or on the race course or on the socials or on next time, the Achilles Connect session. So until then, see you later.